Casio A158 or the Casio A168? What are the similarities and differences between these two watches, and which one should you go with? Welcome back to WristFind. In today's video, we're going to be comparing and contrasting two of Casio's most popular watches, the Casio A158 and the Casio A168. Now, when you first look at these two watches, they look pretty similar. And honestly, they are in a lot of ways. But there's a few key differences that are worth noting, especially if you're trying to decide between one of these two watches. Before we get started, quick wrist check. Today I'm wearing the Casio AQ230. And side note, if you're looking for a Casio that isn't one of these two watches, I would highly recommend this one. But let me know down in the comments what watch you're wearing right now. All right, let's get the similarities out of the way, because functionally these two watches are basically identical. They both display the time, the day, the date. They both have alarm functions and stopwatch capabilities, and they both have backlights. The buttons are also identical in their placement and work exactly the same on both watches. The cases are both metallic resin, so neither of these have stainless steel or full metal cases. But they do both have Casio's classic stainless steel bracelets. The bracelets are slightly different. You can see the links on the A158 are slightly larger than the links on the A168. But honestly, this is a very minor visual difference. I've never noticed a difference in how the bracelet actually wears. They're both light and durable, and they work just fine, although they do pull hairs quite a bit. So functionally, these watches are pretty much the same. They both do the same things and both have basically the same user experience to them. But with that being said, let's get into some key differences between these two watches, starting with the backlight. The backlight on the A158 is much weaker. You can see here with the room in full darkness with just a small light on the watch that you can see a faint green glow coming from the left side. And compare that to the backlight on the A168, which lights up the entire display in this nice blue glow. This is what Casio calls their electroluminescence, and it's quite a bit brighter than the A158. So that's going to be the first main difference between these two watches, with the backlight on the A158 being this soft green glow, and the backlight on the A168 being this much brighter blue glow. The next big difference between these two watches is just going to be their size. Without including the buttons, the A158 measures just over 33 millimeters in case width, whereas the slightly larger A168 measures in at about 35.5 millimeters. Lug to lug, the A158 comes in at about 36 millimeters, and the A168 comes in at just over 38 millimeters. And finally, we have case thickness, with the smaller A158 coming in at 8.6 millimeters, and the larger A168 coming in at 9.7 millimeters. So the A168 is basically just bigger than the A158 in all dimensions. It's not that dramatic in terms of the difference in actual millimeters, but the A168 definitely feels larger and beefier than its smaller counterpart. But some of the more noticeable differences are actually in the watch and dial design and aesthetics. The A158 is a bit more muted. It has some dull red and blue coloring along with some yellow golden text, which is also present on the A161, but it's just a bit more saturated and the colors pop quite a bit more. So when you're looking at these two watches side by side, I think the A168 just pops out a bit more, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. I personally prefer the more muted, subtle look of the A158. Both watches have that very retro, old school feel to them, but in my opinion, the A158 does this in a slightly more classy and subtle way. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the A168. I still think it's a fantastic looking watch, but to me it is a bit more cartoony and flashy, and is a little bit more in your face with its colors and aesthetics. Again, both watches are awesome, and a lot of people do prefer the look of the A168 over the look of the A158, and that's totally fine. This is more of a personal preference than anything else. Finally, let's take a look at both of these watches on my wrist so you can get an idea of how they actually look. And just for reference, I have about a 6.5 inch wrist. I like small watches, so again, I personally prefer the slightly slimmer and smaller profile of the A158. And here's the A168 for comparison, again on a 6.5 inch wrist. So just a little bigger, a little beefier, and definitely sits sits up higher on my wrist. So at the end of the day, there really isn't a better or worse option when it comes to these two watches. Yes, the A168 has a much improved backlight, but outside of that, these watches are functionally identical. And the discrepancies really just come down to a couple small differences in case size, coloring, and overall look to the watches. It might sound like a cop-out, but really neither one is better or worse than the other. If you like the slightly smaller, more subtle look of the A158, that's the watch for you. And if you want your watch to pop a little more and sit a bit higher on your wrist, then the A168 is the one for you. But the easy answer is just to buy both and then also buy the AQ230A just because I love this watch. If you want to see my full review of this watch and why I like it so much, check out this video right here. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to stay up to date with all things watch collecting, and I'll see you in the next video.